Dr. Will Cole, how you doing today?
My friend, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
I'm beyond excited to have you because I think there's so much, and we kind of were talking about this before we started rolling. There's a lot of crazy things going on. There's obviously we're in the middle of a global pandemic. It seems like there's a lot of doom and gloom and fear, but there isn't a lot of talk about health and wellness. So I was like,
hmm
I gotta call my friend, Dr. Will Cole, have him
Yeah.
tell us like what should we be doing? There's all of these people saying stay inside, and there's all the mental
hmm
health ramifications with that. You know,
hmm
what should we be doing right now? I'm just gonna dive right in with that one.
Yeah. So I think it depends on the person, right? It depends on who we're talking about, the context of it, where they're living, what's their health like. There's so many things to consider. But you're right, there's so much conflicting information out there, and some advice may be great for some people, but can, as you mentioned, things like mental health ramifications of being too isolated and what's that look like. So I think that we can only we should focus on the things we can control and do that the best we can with the access we have that makes the most sense for us. And I think what we can control, we know specifically with the virus that's going on now, it's very contagious. But we also know the people that get the more serious manifestations of this virus tend to be people in poorer health. And there's exceptions to that, of course. And this is a novel virus, keyword novel there. We don't understand everything about it. And I think in hindsight, we'll know a lot more. But what we understand today is that the people that have things like metabolic issues, insulin resistance, people that have type 2 diabetes, people that have these cardiometabolic issues, which are largely lifestyle driven things, they can drastically mitigate risk factors. And does that mean they can control everything? Does that mean that they're taking their risks to nothing? No, but there's so much agency we have over our wellness with this specific virus. And thank God that is the case, because there are many pandemics in human history where that wasn't the case. It did hit the young and the virile and the healthy, and it took them out. That doesn't seem the case for the majority of cases for this virus. So I think that there is a silver lining, albeit it's very dire for many people and should not be taken lightly. For many of us, there's a lot we can do to decrease risk factors for the more severe manifestations of COVID-19. So that starts with foods. That starts with every meal is another opportunity to really build a healthy, modulated immune system. Because what's happening with COVID-19 specifically is that when the immune system, it's creating a hyper-inflammatory response against the lungs. That's typically what's going on, and that puts stress on the heart and the lungs, and that is what turns out to be fatal for the people that it is fatal for. But the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, every meal we have is another chance. It's things that are going to be helping to support healthy, balanced immune function, healthy, balanced inflammatory pathways. Inflammation is a product of the immune system, so it's not inherently bad. We want healthy inflammatory levels to fight out viruses and fight out bacteria, to help to manage that infection in a proper, balanced way. The problem is the hyperinflammatory state that some people find themselves in, with or without a virus. That's a problem. That chronic inflammation is the problem, and it's the chronic inflammation that's the commonality between just about every health problem under the sun. Autoimmune issues, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, all of these are chronic inflammatory health problems. And these are largely, lifestyle has a component, if not a major component, to all of these health problems. So that's where I would say they need to start with food. And then from there, they can lean into other things when it's appropriate, things like supplementation, natural medicines, other lifestyle, being active, moving your body, all these basic things that we all know intuitively we should be doing. But hopefully, if this will propel people to do it even more now, to take control what they can control, and mitigate risk factors as much as they can.
Well, I think that's, to your point, I think that people, they know, even there's a lot of things that they know, or don't know that they know. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that inflammation is probably something that a lot of people don't even know that they don't know. And it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those things that you go, okay, yeah, I should be working out, I should be getting the proper amount of sleep. But so many people don't realize how
Mm-hmm.
many external factors contribute to inflammation, and how you can by, obviously I'm a chef, you're a doctor, how much what you put in your body affects that inflammatory response and your ability to heal.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, every food we eat either feeds inflammation or fights it. And some will do it in major ways, some will do it in insignificant ways, but there's no benign food. There's no, as I said in the book, there's no Switzerland meal where it's completely neutral, where it's not causing anything to your biochemistry. It's doing one or the other in big ways or small ways. And we're all different. That's the heart of functional medicine. It's bio-individuality, and what works for one person may not work for the rest. And I try to do the best I can to not make broad sweeping, overgeneralized, extreme statements, because my day job is consulting patients online. I know if I hung my hat on one thing for everybody, I'd be proven wrong all day long.
Sure.
So it's good to keep an open mind and flexibility intellectually and just clinically for me to know where's this person at, what works for them. But there's some common truths, right? I mean, we should really avoid foods that disrupt the microbiome, which is the trillions of bacteria in our gut, which drive inflammation levels up, which again, chronic inflammation is the problem. So we all have different tolerances to these things, but something that I write about in the inflammation spectrum, what I refer to as the core four, these are the 4 foods or food additives that are the most likely to cause chronic inflammation in most people.
Sure.
Again, some people can get away with more of these and be fine. Some people have very little tolerance to these foods and will drive inflammation levels up. Those are grains, primarily gluten-containing grains, but all grains can behave inflammatory depending on the person. Second would be conventional dairy. And there's definitely healthier variations of dairy. And I have the contextual
Like
conversation.
a raw milk type, if you had access to getting raw milk, something that has the enzymes in there that helps the body digest, that's not pasteurized.
Exactly. So grass-fed, raw if it's accessible, organic. You're seeing a lot of brands come out with, they're raising these A2 predominant cows that are predominantly making the beta A2 casein. So the OG cow, like before we crossbred and did all the modern farming stuff we did, humans would have had, when they did have dairy, they would predominantly have these beta A2 casein. The dairy protein in the primordial ancient cow would have had that. Our genetics haven't changed in 10,000 years, but yet our food supply, including farming, has changed the food supply quite dramatically, cows being a part of that change. So this genetic, epigenetic, evolutionary mismatch is what researchers are really exploring as to being a component to why people are having the amount of dairy sensitivities or reactivities or allergies that they're having against dairy. So you see things like A2 milk, which is
I've seen it on the shelves. I haven't. I knew a little bit about it, but now I'm learning all about it, so it's good.
Yeah. So people that have problems with conventional dairy may not have a problem against A2. Even that for some people isn't enough. But yeah, so conventional dairy, definitely the way the cows are raised, it's not good. What they're fed is not good. And that comes out in milk, really. And industrial seed oils, like things like canola oil, vegetable oil, are highly oxidized and rancid oftentimes and just quite inflammatory. They are omega-6 dominant, so there's not a balance of omegas 3, 6, and 9. And they raise inflammation levels up, and they mess your microbiome up and digestion up too. And then the last would be added sugar, which is, most people know that, but that's a major disruptor of the microbiome, and it raises insulin, which will throw off a lot of different problems.
Sugar is delicious, but it really is the devil. Of all the things that should really cut out, it's the sugar, and you notice sugar in everything. It's in everything. It's in everything.
I heard someone say, is actually Mark Hyman. He's the director of the Cleveland Clinic's Functional Medicine Center. He said sugar should be treated as a recreational drug.
It's just as addictive.
Yeah.
It has all of the negative side effects, if not worse, because it's more prevalent than, it's not like, everyone on the street can just get cocaine, but you can go anywhere and get sugar, get hooked, not be able to get off of it. And then there's just kind of this spiral. It's funny that we talk about, we vilify drugs and alcohol and things like that, but we're literally giving people such a powerful drug anywhere, and it's accessible at any time. It's in high amounts everywhere, and that's not regulated. And we're not really talking about this insane negative effects of that.
Right, or at least educating people so they can make an educated guess about it. And most people are just doing it because it's accessible, because it's oftentimes cheap, and they're not educated about this. And even if they are educated about this, it is highly addictive for many people. And even if they want to quit it, these foods are called designer foods for a reason. Food manufacturers know how to make foods very addictive, and they have a customer for life.
How important is, we always hear about mind-body connection, but now that I've dug deeper, and I might into fasting and into all the biohacking things, I don't feel like people are talking enough about the gut-brain connection and your enteric system, and how important a role that plays in regulating your emotions. So I'd love to hear from a professional what your thought on that is.
It's such a central aspect to my work. Again, like I'd mentioned, my main focus has been for the past 12 years at this point is consulting people online. We were one of the first telehealth clinics in the world over 12 years ago. So
you're ahead of the curve on that one.
We were a COVID proof before we knew that we needed to be. But so the reason why I'm saying this is I've had this strange advantage over the years to kind of see the far-reaching implications of gut-brain axis issues. Just running labs on people all over the place. Really, this is a worldwide problem of things negatively impacting the gut-brain axis and the impact that has on somebody's quality of life. So the gut and brain are actually formed from the same fetal tissue. When babies are growing in their mom's womb, the gut and brain are actually formed from that same tissue, and they are inextricably linked for the rest of our lives through what's known in the scientific literature as the gut-brain axis, or the connection between your gut and your brain, your digestive system and your brain. And it's referred to actually as the second brain in the research too. And if you think about it, I think the intestines kind of even resemble the brain.
Well, if you think when you're stressed, what do you feel it the most? You feel you get that pain in your stomach, or
exactly when people have to run to the bathroom and they're nervous or something. I mean, that's the gut-brain axis in motion in real life. And 95% of serotonin, the happy neurotransmitter, is made in the gut and stored in the gut. And it's a major part of the brain. There's a whole field of research looking at the gut-brain axis, or the connection between the gut and brain, in relationship to things like anxiety and depression and fatigue and brain fog. And I get to quantify this on labs for people. And it's amazing that people go about their lives and thinking just because something's there every day, they equate that with normalcy. Just because something's common doesn't mean it's normal. And people struggling with background anxiety or panic attacks or anxiety disorders or low-grade depression or major depressive disorder or other mental health issues or brain fog and fatigue, and they just settle for it, and they take the medications, which may or may not be appropriate, and it may or may not help either, but that's the only option that they're given. And they're told, other than that, like, basically, let's tinker around with different meds, with different dosages, with different brand names or generics, but they're not really given any solution that's sustainable for them. And I'm not anti-medication by any means. I just want to ask the question, what is their most effective option that causes them the least amount of side effects? And for some people, it's the medication plus other things like talk therapy, etc. But many people are doing all the things their doctor is telling them to do. They are compliant patients doing the standard of care, but they're still struggling. When you've exhausted all those options, what option is there? And that's typically where I come in my space in functional medicine. They're like, what's missing here? You are a compliant patient. You're doing what your doctor's telling you to do, but you're still struggling. Oftentimes it's these gut-brain axis issues that need to be dealt with. The second brain, the gut, is influencing the first brain. And different bacterial colonies are associated with anxiety and depression, and dysbioses and imbalances, overgrowths in the gut. Leaky gut syndrome or increased intestinal permeability is linked to systemic inflammation. And then you have this larger field of study referred to as the cytokine model of cognitive function. Cytokines are pro-inflammatory cells. So it's research looking at how inflammation is impacting how our brains work, impacting mental health. And in the West, we like to separate mental health from physical health, but the reality is mental health is physical health. Absolutely. Our brain is part of our body, and it's interesting in psychiatry and the way that we see mental health in the West, it's the only field of medicine that doesn't look at the organ that it's treating. And we can look at inflammation and the quantifiable impact that has on our brains. And that's the thing that I'm really fascinated and passionate about exploring for people.
It's amazing that, you really, it's about adaptability. And I think that the human body has this amazing way of adapting to whatever the circumstance is. And I think that so many people live in this state of normal, or what they would say is quote normal, and they just are just used to that feeling, and they don't even know what it truly feels like to even be incredibly healthy, or know what real wellness even feels like. And that's like the crazy thing, like your body will adapt to the situation that it's presented.
Absolutely.
And how can we best arm ourselves to adapt to a situation of wellness?
Absolutely. It's so true. And sometimes people don't realize how much they are fatigued or how much they are have anxiety or depression until they don't have it.
Well,
And it's really,
that's the I only need 4 hours of sleep crew. It's the people who, they're so used to, if they knew like what that extra 2 hours of sleep and being properly hydrated and having some supplementation, then they go, oh my God, then they feel like they're on drugs.
yeah, I know. Do have some patients when they are struggling with brain fog, like memory, word recall, name recall, like things like that, and fatigue. And when they don't have it for the first couple of days, they're like, I'm so productive. I'm like staying up through the night. I'm like, okay, now we have to like balance it out a bit and like make sure you're getting enough sleep, because that's not good either. Right. But sometimes people are just so excited to be able to get through the day and be productive that when they have the energy, they're not like winding down and sleeping. So we have to balance things off. But it's that age-old cliche, but you don't know what you're missing until it's gone. So many of us take for granted things like energy or when we have it. But the people that are struggling with it, the people that I talk to on an hourly basis, man, it can really mess up your quality of life and wreck your relationships and wreck your job or wreck your just enjoyment, because there's no zest for life anymore.
How would you, so the term functional medicine, it sounds, there's so many, you look at the internet, I live in LA, you can't, swing a smudge stick without hitting someone with an Air One bag, a handful of crystals. So there is a lot of kind of this hooey booey, you see people pushing fit teas and this, how would you explain something like, Dr. Mark Hyman and yourself, what is the basis of functional medicine in it?
Yeah, I may or may not have hit somebody with a smudge stick before, but don't hold that against me. But in all seriousness, I mean, I think that functional medicine is really the best of alternative medicine and the best of conventional medicine, because it's evidence-based, it's measured, it's clinical like conventional medicine, and it's the best of alternative health, which is getting somebody healthy, getting to the root cause, but doing it in a way that is evidence-based, or with the best evidence that we have with the research we have access today. And research is always evolving, and always have to keep an open mind to things changing, and as we learn more about the human body and human health. But it's a progressive, evidence-based form of alternative health. The Cleveland Clinic has a functional medicine center. I mean, there are still people that still dog on and slag off functional medicine. But the reality is, institutes like the Cleveland Clinic and many other mainstream hospitals like this are not opening multi-million-dollar clinics based on quackery. Sure. And it's to me, that's the sort of dying breed, where they're just so tribal and so polarizing and so quote unquote conventional and mainstream that they don't have any open mind to things that are outside of that antiquated, archaic way of getting people healthy, which is basically disease management. It's take this medication, see you later.
And what the conventional medicine hasn't been working to get people healthier. I mean, look at the way that we're trending. If you listen to all the doctors, and obviously like how much does it change? I would say decade to decade, but it seems like every 5 years, what you should be doing, what the food pyramid looks like, all of these things that are set by, the conventional medicine people in the white lab coats. It's like we're trending way towards the unhealthy part than getting ourselves healthy and well. So why not give more energy and more? And I'm glad that the Cleveland Clinic is doing that and putting their money where their mouth is and saying, hey, you know what? There can be a different way, and there is a different way.
Absolutely. I think there is amazing advancements in conventional medicine. And I mentioned this in the book, in the inflammation spectrum. It's that, look, I mean, we have life-saving advancements in technology and life-saving surgeries, life-saving medications. We just ask the question, what is your most effective option that causes you the least amount of side effects? And if a medication fits that criteria, there's some people that are alive because of medications. Of course. But we just don't put that criteria on anything anymore. It's like the only option that's given, and people aren't listened to. And I think a lot of this, because a lot of what's going on right now in the world with autoimmunity affects a lot of women. It's way more women than men. I think a lot of this has to do with not listening to women and knowing their bodies and saying, well, this is just like that, she's just depressed, or she's just anxious, or she's just a little loopy, and just take the psychiatric medication to shut her up.
Sure.
That's what is going on a lot of times, unintentionally or intentionally. It depends on the case you're talking about, but they're just not being heard. People are not being heard. But you can't look at the statistics of autoimmunity and chronic inflammatory problems and mental health issues, and we kind of have to look at what we're doing. The United States, we're spending more on healthcare than the next 10 top spending countries combined. Yet we have the most chronic disease, the most mental health problems, the shortest lifespan of all industrialized nations. It'd be one thing if we spent all that money and we actually saw better outcomes, and we kept doing the same thing and expecting a different result if it was actually seeing some change, but it's not. It's really, we're seeing the same result and we keep doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, there's a lot of various variables as to why that is, but I'm concerned with just the individual. Like, how can we get this information out there so people can have, as I mentioned earlier, agency over their health? Pick the best of conventional medicine when it's appropriate, but let's give people choices, and they can actually have choice over their healthcare.
I think, and to your point, I think there's a lot of reactive healthcare, right? There's a lot of, people don't realize they need to do something until they're like, oh God, I'm 20 pounds overweight, or, oh, you know what? I'm close to having diabetes. I'm pre-diabetic. There's this, that's what I love about you, is you have this amazing proactive, like, let's get in there and figure this out before we have chronic disease, and I'm sure people come to you obviously with ailments, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that come to you that say, like, I just want to feel great, move great, and be able to have an amazing time with my family and be able to work at the high capacity that I want to work at. So, what is something that we could do better to get people to be proactive about their health?
I think conversations like this, I think many people are just so busy, even now, like in the time that we're living in now, when people maybe have slowed down a little bit, they're still busy, and we maybe slowed down for a little bit, but still got busy with other things, but even with our home and within our homes, or working from home. I think it's just educating people, empowering people, having conversations like this, because then they see themselves in the conversation, and then they think, whoa, like I was feeling fatigued, or I did have anxiety, or I did have these inflammatory problems, and they were procrastinating or putting off something about their health. I think that's the biggest thing you can do, because the average person actually does want to feel good. They just don't have the tools to do so, and they don't have the direction to do so, and they don't have the advocate to help them with it.
Sure.
So I think my job is to say, let's educate, let's give them tools, let's advocate for them. All that stuff is super important. And then most people, when they're given an advocate education and tools, they will go and do them, and they will thrive. It's not a quick fix, but it's something that they will definitely start to reclaim their health.
I love that. And what I would imagine that you have a very high population of female clients.
I do.
And I think that's probably because women are way better at admitting or recognizing when something needs to change, and men are just terrible. We don't ask for directions. We don't want to do anything that we were like, we got this. We got this. We don't want to ask for help. Yeah. So what's a way to get dudes more involved in wellness and really kind of having that proactive, obviously getting out of that, well, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to do that. But yet then on the weekends, you're eating a pizza, you're, going out there partying and doing all the things that kind of undo all the things. There's just a very old school mentality that people go, well, I go to the gym, so I'm healthy. And then, their diet is shit. Their sleep is shit. They're doing drugs on the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. But their arms are freaking massive.
They got 6 swole biceps, bro.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I mean, it's like that. I do see a trend that's shifting. That more guys than ever I've seen in 12 years of consulting people online. I've seen more guys. The population, while it's still a minority, is growing in men that are saying, whether it is the women in their life, like their moms, their sisters, their partners, or it's just listening to podcasts. I think that the advent of podcasts and the democratization of this information has really helped guys start to, again, have agency over their health, where it isn't this old thing that our dads and our grandfathers like just didn't go to the doctors, and it's all that stuff. That was passed on to us. And I think that podcasts are raising that awareness to start to break that old mold, so we don't actually do the same things our dads and grandfathers did, and don't necessarily have to go down the same path that they did or are going through with their health currently. So it's interesting. I think that biohacking is an interesting vein that turns a lot of guys onto health.
Because it has hacking in it, so it's got this, got this manly thing. I remember when I started reading people like Dave Asprey, and all those people who started tinkering with everything. I was like, this is biohacking, and it just sounds like a much more dude centric thing. Like,
exactly,
I can hack something.
It's just a euphemism for wellness. It's all it is. It's like wellness is biohacking.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
But I mean, whatever. If that's the Trojan horse that gets them into wellness, let it be.
Yeah.
If that's the gateway into it, that's fine. But the reality is, that's what it is. We are in functional medicine biohacking because we're getting people healthy. It's what we're doing. We're finding out what's blocking them and getting them to optimal wellness. So that's the main motivators for guys is like productivity, cognitive function, like clarity, mental health issues, honestly, anxiety, depression, because it keeps them back from that productivity and feeling good about themselves. Low libido, low sex drive, of course, low testosterone, fatigue. But you know what? I mean, autoimmune issues affect guys too. I see a lot of guys with different autoimmune issues too, mainly like digestive autoimmune GI issues like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. Those would be the most common AI autoimmune issues that I see amongst guys.
So what do men come to you? I'm sure obviously men would most likely say like libido. Libido is the number one thing. So would that be the number one thing they come, or they want to learn about?
That's always listed.
Of course it is.
It's always listed amongst the many things they have,
but we are fine. But if it could be better.
Yeah, exactly. It's always like, because many guys will mention it on the metabolic form. Like it's like a 0 to 3, like, do you have this, this, and this? Right. They won't mention in their main goals. It'll be like anxiety, fatigue, whatever, weight loss. But then you go and see it's all 3 out of 3s in like the erectile dysfunction or low libido section. And then it's just, it's a conversation for me. Like they didn't want to explicitly mention this as a goal, but it's a cool, like, not a cool, but it's a good segue for me to say, hey, let's talk about this. Even though it's uncomfortable for you, let's talk about it. But yeah, it's definitely a major problem for many people, but they're afraid to talk about it.
Sure. And obviously cardiovascular health, having overall wellness is going to, one hand washes the other to be able to kind of alleviate those diseases. So I love your book, The KETOTARIAN. And what is like the 3 things you could just distill of things that people could just getting to more of a keto? Because you hear obviously keto is a very, there's all of these buzzwords and fat, I don't want to call it a fad diet because keto is not a fad diet, but there are a lot of just different diets out there. What do you think? And I know that you said there's no one size fits all, but it seems like keto for a lot of people, or some type of modified keto, increasing the fats, which have been vilified forever, has been helping a majority of people get to wellness.
Yeah. And I would call keto a fad in the sense of it had and has its own zeitgeist at this time in pop culture. And that's okay. I think there's many fads that have a lot of science behind it, and then the pop culture bubble will burst and things will move on. Even when the light's off of it, the light of pop culture is off of keto, the science will remain. The real life effects of it will remain. The health benefits will remain. And I don't think it's necessary. It's used in a negative term sometimes, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad term. It's a fad in the sense of it's in people's awareness.
It's hyper popular right at this moment.
It's popular. Exactly. Yeah. But the reality is I am fascinated by the science of it, and it is an amazing tool to use. And I don't think that everybody has to be in ketosis all day long for every, rest of their life. It's a tool to have. It's actually, ketones are considered the 4th macronutrient by some researchers: proteins, fats, carbs, and beta hydroxybutyrate, the ketone, because it behaves like a macronutrient, a fuel for the body. So the way that I advocate it in KETOTARIAN, which is my made up word for a mostly plant-based, clean ketogenic diet, which there's vegan keto, vegetarian keto, and pescatarian, wild caught fish, fresh seafood, but still a very clean ketogenic
That's
diet.
my life for the most part. I do love my red meat, which it's so hard to get.
Yeah, and I don't in the book I even say, like, if you want to have some grass-fed beef, bring that in too. But I wanted a counter conversation in the ketogenic community, because like the world did not need another meat-centric ketogenic diet book. There
It's
were
like the
tons of
paleo
those.
thing where everyone's like, "Oh, I can eat a pound of bacon, and that's paleo." And like, just because it
Yeah,
qualifies doesn't have the nutritional density and overall health
exactly.
profile that's going to help you.
Totally. So I'm such a fan. Like Bel Campo in LA, like they're doing
Yeah,
such
right up the
awesome
street.
things. They're great people, and like I love what they're doing. I have Bel Campo shipped to my house every month, so I'm not
You and
against red
Seamus
meat.
Mullen got me
Oh,
on Bel
sweet.
Campo.
Yeah,
Big
he
fan.
loves Bel Campo. Every time I'm in LA, I'm like, I'll go there like before COVID, right? And I see him like picking up some meat there. I'm like, what the heck are you here
I think
for?
he lives. I think he's invested in there or something.
Yeah,
They
may
just have like a
live in the
regular
back.
Seamus Mullen meat delivery.
Yeah. But so, yeah, that's what ketotarian is. So I advocate to do at least 60 days, mostly plant-based, clean ketogenic diet. Why? It's because it allows some time for your body to gain metabolic flexibility, to get the benefits of ketosis, which, yes, it's a way to burn fat, but beta hydroxybutyrate passes through the blood-brain barrier. It's clean fuel for your brain. So it's great for people struggling with fatigue and brain fog and anxiety and depression. And it's a signaling molecule lowering inflammation pathways. So things like NF-kappa B, COX-2, these inflammasome, these inflammatory pathways, beta hydroxybutyrate lowers the inflammation and upregulates things like NRF2, AMPK, these basically pro-antioxidant, pro-longevity pathways, and activating stem cells and autophagy and cellular recycling and all this cool stuff that we want. BDNF in our brain, like actually making new neurons, mitochondrial biogenesis. I could go on and on. There's
Sure.
a lot of cool things for our energy, our immune system, and feeling great. That's what I'm fascinated about. So whether that's popular or not right now, I'm always fascinated by those things, people feeling great, and that's a tool to have. But then after the 60 days, for most people, I actually advocate a cyclical ketotarian way of eating where they can moderate their carbs and go back in ketosis. They can fast more one day and then
Cycle
increase
their
their
carb
carb.
on and off. Yeah.
Exactly. Diet variation, macro variation is actually really good to maintain metabolic flexibility. So that's how I advocate it for most people. And then some people obviously get the benefits of ketones longer term. People with neurological issues, severe like insulin resistance, people with other inflammatory problems, they could stay in ketosis longer, and that's completely fine. But not everybody needs or wants to do that, and that's same with me. I like the variety. I like my sweet potato fries, and I like more fruit sometimes, and I want to have the grace and the
I was
flexibility.
thinking about a glass of wine or maybe a drink, and you said I'd like to have my sweet potato and my fruit.
Live on the I'm a crazy guy. I'm really crazy.
I was like, oh, you mean a bottle of wine's not a good thing? You mentioned autophagy, and that's something that I learned about through fasting and like playing with my own kind of biohacking. But I didn't realize. I thought, of course, fasting was the only way to autophagy. What are the other kind of, and if anyone doesn't know what autophagy is, I'll let you take the lead on that one. Just and you can kind of touch on fasting and why it's important and how it differs, because this is something that people always ask me because I've been fasting forever. Is especially women are always super keen to want to know about fasting, and from what I've been told, there's different ways that women and men should modulate it based on the makeup of who they are.
Yeah, sure. So autophagy, breaking that word down, autophagy, self-phagy eating. So it's autophagy is self-eating. It's your healthy cells recycling and gobbling up the dysfunctional cells. So think of it as sort of the cellular renewal, cellular recycling pathway of the body, anti-aging, like anything that our body needs to do as far as supporting healthy youth pathways, slowing down accelerated aging. Autophagy is a central component of that, as well as decreasing risks for disease, autoimmune diseases, cardiometabolic issues, etc. So it is an important part. Modernity, the way that we live in our life, again, this evolutionary mismatch, we're doing a lot of stuff in our world that's very much has a mismatch with our genetics, which we have not adapted to. At least that's what researchers how they're explaining it. And that's really stressing out our genome and triggering genetic predispositions that have always been there for 10,000 years, but are being awoken like never before because of this genetic epigenetic mismatch. Well, autophagy and doing things in your life that supports things like autophagy and balancing the immune system and inflammation is one way to mitigate and keep those bad genes downregulated and turned off and start supporting healthy genetic expression. So autophagy is one way to do that. Fasting is a wonderful way to support autophagy. It's one of the most well-researched ways to support autophagy. Another way is the ketogenic diet, because the ketogenic diet is a fasting mimicking diet. There is the fasting mimicking diet, which people know that are not Prolon with Walter Longo and the research about that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ketogenic diet. A lot of the pathways mimics fasting. So you look at the upregulation of beta hydroxybutyrate, the ketone, fasting increases ketones, so does the ketogenic diet. And the same benefits, the brain boosting, anti-inflammatory benefits of the ketone BHB, it's happening with both fasting and the ketogenic diet. So they're really part of that same lifestyle, because the more fat adapted somebody is, the more stable their blood sugar is, the more used they are to burning fat, their body's used to burning fat, the more they will just randomly intermittent fast, because they're just less hungry. They're not hangry anymore. They can go longer without eating. That's sort of that log on the fire that I mentioned in KETOTARIAN. It burns more sustainably.
Sure.
Versus the kindling, which is like burning sugar for fuel, which is short-lived, and you have to keep putting kindling on 6 times a day or you're going to get really hangry and fatigued. So that's the two main ways to support autophagy. And then many foods, actually polyphenol-rich foods, are a wonderful way to support autophagy too. So think things like extra virgin olive oil, low glycemic fruits like berries, cinnamon, spices, herbs. These are all really good ways to support autophagy pathways as well. So marrying that nutrient-dense, polyphenol-rich diet with the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting is really what KETOTARIAN is, and it really sort of marries all those components. And one compound specifically that I use every day, or almost every day, it's bergamot, which is a citrus from Calabria in Italy, but it's used, you can get bergamot essential oils, but I
Smells
typically,
delicious.
yeah, I love it. And I have it in Earl Grey tea. It's just Earl Grey tea typically is traditionally with real bergamot oil. Make sure it's not artificial on the label, but bergamot's been shown to increase autophagy too, and the catechins in the tea as well. So it's a great way I will drink the Earl Grey tea when I fast to support autophagy pathways, and then break my fast with something like KETOTARIAN.
So for fasting, if you want to do an intro to fasting, would you say people should just start fasting right away with the same diet that they're doing, or should they ease into a more ketogenic diet and then play with fasting? Like what do you think would be the gateway to get people to fasting better, or to even understanding fasting? Because I know when I first started, there's a very funny mental shift that has to happen where your body, you're like, oh my God, I should be eating right now. Or, oh, I didn't, I would be the first person to tell you breakfast is so important. It's the most important meal of the day. We've been told that forever.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, I need to have a big meal before I go work out, or else I'm going to have a terrible workout. And then you start to unlearn these by going, oh, my body, it doesn't need that. I can go work out in a fasted state, and I actually feel better, and I feel super energized. And it's almost like this weird, I didn't know until fasting how much. Then afterwards I'd come home and maybe I'd have oatmeal, or I'd have something, carb rich, and you feel that slump, and you're like, wow, I've never actually, because that happens throughout the day, obviously, but based on what you put in your body. But really, after coming out of a fast, if you drench yourself with carbs, it's like this crazy crash that I didn't ever realize.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that a ketogenic diet is really complementary to fasting, and it makes the fasting a lot easier because you're getting your blood sugar more stable. And you get a lot of the same benefits of fasting without actually fasting. But the research around fasting, most of it at least, was actually done with no change of diet.
Right.
So it's maybe promising for people that aren't ready to change their food so much, that there is evidence to show that it's beneficial even just when you eat, not just what you eat. So I'm not an advocate for that as a functional medicine practitioner, nor you're not an advocate for that either. But
that's the way that it's explained at first. Is they say, oh, well, you can eat anything within an 8-hour window. and then you're just fasting the rest of the time, which is like it's a half solution.
Yeah, you may see some changes, and there's evidence to show you may see some benefits because you're giving your body a break from all the junk you're feeding it. But let's like not feed it junk in those 8 hours or 6 hours. I haven't actually said this yet, but my third book that I'm working on right now will be about fasting. It's like a part 2 of KETOTARIAN, and the science is fascinating for me. It'll be out like the first part of next year.
What's it
but
called?
Basically, it is. I think that people need to find the fasting that works for their body. And women should be extra mindful of this, as fasting can be wonderful women, because it's not helpful to overgeneralize women into one group either. I mean, it's a woman going through PCOS, endometriosis. I mean, some hormonal problems do great with fasting, some don't so much, but it's not all or nothing. So find a gentle, intuitive way to fast. And that's what I would advocate for people to do. So I do an 18-6, like fasting to eating window. I'll eat between 12 and 6 p.m.
No, I do 16-8. There you go. You go the other way.
Yeah.
You're
well,
hardcore.
Sometimes I'll do 16-8.
You're hardcore.
Sometimes I'll do 16-8 too. And some days I'll do an OMAD, like one meal a day, where I'll do a 22-2. Basically, it's an almost OMAD approach where I'm doing like a transition, like broth, like I have broth here. This is from Venice, actually. Al Venice, nice. You know, that brand, Al Venice. It's their own Abbott. Yeah. So that's their chicken lavender broth. So I'll break a fast with that or another broth like this, and then I'll have like a regular meal. So there's different ways to do it, but it's where do you see the biggest traction? Where do you see your energy levels go and your health goals go and your inflammation, your weight, whatever you're tracking, what's moving the needle for you? And more isn't always better when it comes to fasting. And you have to find that rhythm, because refeeding, meaning eating foods and breaking that fast, is just as important for the metabolism as fasting.
I learned that the hard way. Like I said, just dousing myself with like, because you sometimes get to the end of a fast and I'll be watching if I'm busy, it's usually easy. I can just blow through it, and I'll even maybe go over by an hour or so. But if I'm just sitting around, or if I'm on my computer and I kind of look at the clock and I'm just waiting for that to tick to, okay, it's noon, I'm going to eat, and then I just start I have to really go, like take a step back. What's the best, most nutritionally dense food that's going to keep me going for the rest of the day? Don't just grab a bagel or grab something that's really quick and easy and then, like asleep at the desk for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it'll crash. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah. So I mean, those are all different ways to do it, and there's so many ways to fast. But giving your body a break from eating, and then when you break the fast, eating nutrient-dense foods, that yin and yang, the balance is where the magic happens.
So you hear so much about, obviously fasting. We're talking about giving your body a break, detoxing, and that it seems like detox has become such, I want to talk about fads and like overused and abused things. There's, detox, there's juice fast, there's detox teas, there's so much bullshit around, detox. I'd love to know your take on detoxification. Is it something, obviously your body naturally detoxifies itself. Obviously there are things that you can do to help your body accelerate that. What is your thought on juice fasts and all these kind of trendy fasting type diets?
I think the problem oftentimes is the language used and without education and context and depth to it. So I think that oftentimes people that are in the wellness world that are throwing words around flippantly like detoxing and this type of things aren't necessarily wrong. They're just not telling the entire story. But where do you have that conversation, I think, is the biggest thing. So I think it's easy for us, and I'm the same way, where I see things, I'm like, really, like what are you even talking about? But if you look beyond that, you realize that what they're talking about is supporting liver detoxification pathways. It's supporting the body's ability to do what it always needs to do and wants to do, and everybody is doing, or they would be dead. But a lot of people have impaired detox pathways because the amount of toxicity in our world. So, like what happened in Flint, Michigan, it didn't just happen in Flint. I mean, the amount of water
not too
contamination
far from where I grew up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought you were from Michigan. So that's not just happening there; it's happening everywhere. I mean, a lot of environmental groups have these amazing databases online where you can look at your local municipality and what's in the waters. They may pass certain thresholds of what's permissible or not permissible, but the reality is it's not healthy for the human body. And then that goes beyond that, what the air we're breathing and the amount of environmental pollutants there, and the food supply and what's in the soil, and the
Pesticides.
yeah, pesticides, herbicides, it's everything. Is we, again, our genetics aren't adapted to all this stuff. So can we do things that before, like throughout human history, they wouldn't have to do these sort of things because there's more of a congruency between genetics and epigenetics.
Mm-hmm.
But now this mismatched chasm is growing wider and wider. That's the problem. So things like fasting. So if someone's saying a juice fast,
well, it
like
seems
that
like
is
an excuse for bad behavior. Like they say that, people who are like, I'm on a juice fast for the week. And then I'm like, I just saw you out drinking till 3 a.m. last weekend. And now it's like, oh, well, I'm going to cleanse this week. And it's like,
yeah, it's the shame, regret, like try to like make up for your sins. That's a dieting world, right? It's like probably nothing new. It just looks different on the surface, but that's not good.
To see everybody cleansing all the time, so it's like you scroll through your Instagram feed.
Yeah, all the cleanses. Yeah, I just think food should be make your life a detox, make your life a cleanse. It's not going to be solved in 7 days of this. What's your breakfast, lunch, and dinner are your cleanse.
I think that's a good title for a book right there. Make your life a cleanse. I'm just giving you that. Just take that one because it's true. It's it's what happens when you show up every day. It's it's not one giant fast that you're going to do. It's not a week's worth of cleansing. It's those incremental, it's like steering this giant ship. You have to do it incrementally before the whole thing turns.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is where you'll really see sustainable, real results, and you'll see labs move. You'll get inflammation levels down when it's just a lifestyle and all you're doing is integrating wellness into your life. And it's not a program. It's not a fad. It's not a time span of X amount of days. It's just life. And that's when you see real cool, sustainable results with your energy, with your health, with your labs, all that stuff.
How important is mindfulness to you? Like for me, I get up every day and I have that 5-minute journal, which someone bought me, which I thought was a great, at first I was like, oh God, what is this? And I didn't realize how, I consider myself a very gracious person. I try to have gratitude in all the things I do, but actually writing it down really made it connect with me. And I was just wondering, I always love to ask people what their connection to mindfulness is, if there's a meditation practice or kind of what your day would look like as far as that goes.
Yeah, it's a major part of my job, but it's also a major part of my life. It's a major part of my job because I'm really dealing with heavy stuff with my patients, like people that are going through really major things, inactive flares, disillusioned, very much overwhelmed with all this health stuff. And I have to hold space for them. So I have to be on my A game on just being able to even do that. Because otherwise I'm going to be taken and swept away in that sea of emotions and thoughts and chatter and mental energetic clutter. So mindfulness practice is a major part of our whole clinic here. Like we start our day off at the clinic with prayer and case reviews first, but then also prayer and meditation for the day, just so we could be there for people in the way that they need to. So there's a collective group people doing that here. And on an individual, it's in between appointments. Like I have to really center myself, breathe. It's just a simple breathing meditation. It's nothing too crazy, but it's just calming my mind and centering myself in the present moment is the best way that I do it. I get out in nature as much as I can. The research out of Japan and South Korea looking at what they refer to as Shinrin-yoku, which is forest bathing. It's really fascinating of just the essential oils in nature and all the things that we like to get into bottles and all that stuff. Nature provides us so much of that for free. And if you have access to that, I know not everybody does, but I live in the country, in Pennsylvania, so that's not a problem for me. But
I've seen you with your wild turkeys.
Yeah, my brother-in-law. Yeah, that's right. We live on the farm country here. But I hang out with turkey, couple geese. But if you can't do that, then find an urban garden, find a park. Get out, make a drive as much as you can out to nature and spend some time out there. I think that's important. Or it's really fascinating if you want to go I bring a lot of the outside inside. So I have plants all around my office, like everywhere. That's very cathartic. And there's even studies to show that even pictures of nature has a calming effect at bringing a centeredness into your life. So there's so many things you can do depending on what access you have, what's realistic for your life. But those are some things that I do to bring stillness into my life as much as I can.
And I don't think people realize how impactful and how important it is too. It's like that the kind of oxygen mask metaphor where you have to put it on yourself and take care of yourself before you have you put it on someone else. And you have the ability to, if you aren't centered, you're not going to be able to give your clients the best of what they deserve. And energy is transferable. So you are and especially, you are an empath and you are helping people.
Mm-hmm.
You will take on part of that, and you have to kind of like just kind of get through that so you're ready to take on this person. I love that. And to your point of getting in nature, I went for a run the other day, and I realized that I didn't bring my headphones. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave my phone in the car. I'm going to leave my headphones. And it's so crazy because now you're so conditioned to like, I'm going to listen to a podcast. I'm going to have the music. And just to run in nature, I weirdly felt more energized just running with nothing. It was like literally just running through nature, looking at everything, actually hearing what's going on around me. And it was a totally different run. I just felt like when I ended, I was like, I could have done another 3-4 miles. It just felt so good. So I think that, we're so divorced from nature. We're in front of screens so many times. I just watched that Social Disruption documentary. If you haven't seen it on Netflix,
I haven't.
Oh God, you should add that to your list. But it just shows how addicted we are to these screens and this technology. And like you've said, we aren't conditioned for this. We haven't evolved to. I don't know that we'll ever evolve unless we have some kind of AI inside of us to be conditioned to seeing this much information. I read some fact that said we see more information in one day than the average person did 100 years ago in a lifetime, or we consume that much information.
Yeah.
So that's a startling fact that our brains, talking about mental health, we're not set up for this. We're not set up to be swiping and looking at people and, video conferencing and not having, the human connections. And I think that those human connections, from what I've read, are even more important than anything you can. I mean, obviously diet and everything, but just having a community should be also paramount as well.
Yeah. Community and connection to nature are such important medicines that we don't give enough credence to. They are just as important, if not more important than everything else.
That's amazing. So I like to end all of my pods with, are you familiar with the Proust questionnaire?
No, I'm not, but I'm excited to learn.
Brilliant guy who had basically, it's a 35 questions, not doing 35 questions, just so you know. It's just a kind of a questionnaire to get to know someone as a human better. And as they kind of touch on, if you ever watched Inside the Actor's Studio, they kind of use a version of this where they get to know people. So obviously you're an amazing doctor, but this is just to get to know you a little more as human. So
I'm excited.
The first one is more my version of a question, and it's, what's something that you learned about yourself in quarantine?
How much I really love being with my family and traveling all the time. I appreciate them so much more, I think, during this time.
Which historical figure do you identify most with? Putting you on the spot.
Oh, man. I don't know. I mean, let's just say, how about Moses? Is that good?
Wow. Good. That's probably above good.
Let's just say Moses for many reasons, but
well, there's obviously a connection to the teaching. So, having a little bit of knowledge and being able to speak to the people.
Bring some freedom to people.
Excellent. I love that. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
My predisposition towards anxiousness. And I don't take it too, I don't know if he's supposed to be rapid fire or not, but I have a double MTHFR gene variant, which these methylation gene variants, there's autoimmunity on both sides of my family. So I talked about this. I've written about this in the books. I had to be like extra diligent with my health and all this mental health, self-care stuff we're talking about, stress management that we're talking about. I have to implement in my own life because of that. If I'm like eating whatever, any junk food under the sun, which isn't my main thing. But for me, it would be mainly, it's not just about what you're feeding your body, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's about what you're feeding your head and your heart and your soul. And for me, it's like you said, like spending all that time in the email and all the stuff I have to write or reports I have to do, all that stuff can really feed my anxiousness. So I need to detach and get to nature for that reason. So if one thing I could get rid of, and anybody with anxiety would probably say the same thing. Like,
this is me right here.
All right.
I've never had the blood work done, so I would actually like to know.
Hey, I know a guy.
I know a guy.
That's what it is for me.
Yeah, I think that to your point, anxiety. I used to have crippling anxiety where I would have when I went through a really nasty divorce. I would wake up in the middle of the night with like gasping for air with my heart pounding, and I didn't know how to control myself. And then you're in this vicious cycle, and your brain has this way of looping, and you get in this catastrophic thinking. And I'm like, am I having a heart attack? Am I dying? I've never run any of the labs. I did learn how to breathe, and I did learn how to meditate and kind of take myself out of that. And I can tell from technology, whether it's Instagram, and this is why you should watch that documentary.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a drug, and it really just increases that anxiety over and over and over again. And it's something that I need to be, like me putting the phone in the car, and you even know it too. For me, I was like, I know this is bad for me, yet I can't, I pick my phone up to check if there's an alert or, if someone commented on a post. So it's insane how I can be cognizant of how bad it is, but yet still keep repeating that cycle. I'm a fucking addict when it comes to my phone.
Yeah. Welcome to the club.
Oh, what is your most treasured possession?
Like physical possession or
whatever you have.
I mean, the most honestly, this is not just cliche. My honestly most treasured possession, and this isn't they're not my possessions, but they are things that I hold dearly in my life, is my family, is my wife and my kids. That they're like the everything to me. And if everything else is gone, that they're who I really care about at the end of the day. So it's that, but they're not material stuff, but I'm sure I could pick a material thing too.
It's funny that, no, but to anyone who has been on this podcast, who has a family, that's the number one thing they say.
Yeah, so it's easy. I mean, it's true. It's easy.
It makes the most sense as well. What is your greatest fear?
My greatest fear. One of my greatest fears is heights. I'm like really dramatic. Like it's a severely visceral vasovagal response. Like I get very lightheaded, and I walked this bridge. I forget what it was called, but it was a massively high bridge where they have you on this zip line and you're walking like below the bridge on this like very narrow beam in West Virginia. I drove down there last summer, and it was, my vision starts going out. Like it's like such a visceral response. So probably would be heights for me. Yeah, or not. I love Zevia too, drinks, and that's a really fear, but not having Zevia in my life is kind of like, maybe that's my second most prized possession.
I have that weird, I'm one of those weird people who, when I get to heights, I'm like, I have this thing I want to jump off. I don't know what that is medically.
What? Oh my God.
I don't want to hurt myself.
Yeah, but no, I get what you're saying. You just want to like feel the fear and do it anyway.
I just want to fucking fly. So to end, what is your motto?
What's my motto? I mean, my motto with my work is twofold. It's a mantra in the clinic here is you can't heal a body you hate. You can't shame or stress or obsess your way into wellness. So it's a motto for so much of what I work on is just bringing a grace and lightness into wellness. And that's really the second part. So that's my motto for my work, and what my focus is really, there's so much arduous like aspects to health where we become the source of dread for people, or they just feel like they're so inadequate to be able to make healthy choices in their life. And I want to be the antithesis of that, to really be accessible, be approachable, to allow people to know that you don't have to be perfect. I can meet you where you're at, be there for you in the way that you need to, and you can lean into this thing. And when you start feeling better, that's such an encourager. because you say, whoa, wow, this isn't just these rules of I can't have this or I have to eat this. It's like, no, I love feeling better more than I miss that food that made me feel like crap. And that's what I want people to get to.
I love that. And I think people do focus too much about what they can't have and all the amazing things that they can have, and what life has to offer. So I know you are available from anywhere, because you were doing the remote before it was cool to do the remote
That's because
telehealth.
I live in Pittsburgh, man. No one's here.
Pittsburgh, from what I hear, Pittsburgh's got a great food scene going on. There's a lot of growth. So
It is. It's a cool city. There are people here. I just jesting, but I mean, there's a lot of people that need help that aren't here.
Of course.
But yeah, it's that's why we started it. It wasn't anything. We weren't being intentional with it other than that.
So where can people find you?
Everything's at drwillcole.com. That's drwillcole.com.
Amazing. Dr. Will Cole, thank you so much for taking the time, dispelling a lot of different myths, and just telling us how we can optimize our health. You're an awesome person, a great doctor, and becoming a dear friend. So
Thanks,
great to
man.
chat with you today.
Appreciate it.
Talk to you later.